Hi everyone, and welcome to D&D Horror Stories with D&D Doge. In today's video, we have a story about a D&D group that decided to play a tabletop RPG system that is infamous for its content. A story about a physical altercation that took place during a Dungeons & Dragons game, and much more. So without further ado, let's get right into these D&D horror stories. Dungeons & Dragons Dust Up ended up with me in the hospital. By Reddit user Tactical Pixie 1138. So I'm typing this up on my way home from the hospital. Tonight was D&D night for us at the local game store. We were playing at our usual table next to the shelves where there are painted minis and terrain for all systems. Mostly Warhammer 40k minis and terrain, with some D&D tossed in for good measure. The store lets people sell them on commission, with the store taking a small cut. Another table was getting a little loud, and we asked them if they could quiet down. Their dungeon master had no problems with that, since we were polite and asked the exuberant player to dial it back down a bit. Things got loud after a while. They looked like they were getting to the boss battle, and the loud player was getting louder. We paid it little mind, as we were in our combat at the time. Nothing fancy, just some incidental mobs in the dungeon. It got louder and quieter in a cycle, and we thought little of it, until I stood up to move my mini on the map to get into a better position to fireball without hitting my own crew, when we heard, "You mother effer!" I looked over just in time to see the dungeon master getting linebackered by the loud player, and they were both falling towards me. Before I could move, they ran me right into the shelves. Store staff intervened. Police and medical was called. First aid was administered. I had a gnarly cut on my arm, a bruise on my face, and my elbow hurt a lot. And statements were made. And yes, I pressed charges. The cut was treated with butterfly closures, and the elbow suffered a non-displaced radial head fracture, which thankfully won't need a cast, and I'll be in a sling for a few days. Then, once the orthopedist looks at it, I'll be put on range of motion exercises for the next 2 months. I'm also going to look into suing the guy, since I'm going to be on short-term disability since I can't do my job as a paramedic with a gimpy arm. The reason that loud guy snapped? I learned later that his character was downed, not killed, when the dice rolls failed him. Other than that, I don't know the final results of things. I'll find out more next game night. I imagine that the loud guy is banned from the store, at the very least, and that he's going to have to pay the damages to the shelves and the minis that were on commission. Well, that is one way to end D&D night. Something tells me that the loud player at the other table has quite a temper problem, if getting downed in a game of D&D due to his own dice roll was enough for him to attack his dungeon master, and injuring an innocent bystander in the process. I imagine that OP is correct that the loud player won't be allowed in the game store anymore after that outburst, though in order to make him pay for damages, the store will likely have to seek legal action. Hopefully, OP won't be out of commission for long, and if he does decide to pursue legal action against the loud player, he can do so without too much cost and hassle. Let's move on to the next post. The One Time I Played F.A.T.A.L, by Reddit user World Gone Away. Content warning. SA, because F.A.T.A.L. TLDR, I played F.A.T.A.L once, and it stopped being fun quickly. A shout out to Amidja16 for telling me to share this. Way back in my game store days, my younger brother and I ended up hearing about a tabletop RPG that was on a lot of people's blacklists. It was called F.A.T.A.L. Now, on the surface, F.A.T.A.L is a fantasy RPG that has a great deal of, adult themes. It's infamous for its content, including widespread sexuality, especially of the non-consensual variety. And the character sheet is really something else. It has provisions for the size and circumference of your character's sexual organs. This is important because if something is inserted, so to speak, you need to make a kind of saving throw to avoid taking damage. Alright, I know what sub this is, so I'm sure that all of you guys have seen enough crap on here that is probably worse, but this is still incredibly awkward to talk about. F.A.T.A.L is essentially a tabletop RPG built entirely around acting out SA fantasies. Going to rip that band-aid off right now. So one night, my brother says that we should try playing it for the lulz. I remember telling him that I didn't think anybody would actually want to play it, though he downloads a PDF of the rulebook, prints it off, and enlists 2 more players, his girlfriend and my girlfriend respectively. We do a cursory read over the rules, and we do a rock, paper, scissors to try to find out who the hell is going to be running this. And as it so happens, my girlfriend ends up being the winner, or rather loser, because none of us actually wanted to run this. The 3 of us players put together characters and share some immature giggles about some of the stats, and my girlfriend finds a pre-written, quote, intro adventure on the internet with a sort of auto-battle chart where the game master can randomly roll for the type of actions enemies do. This turns out to be a bad idea. Well, some would say that playing F.A.T.A.L is a bad idea, but here we are. So, the way that this intro adventure was written, the player characters are being forced to work in a mine by kobold captors. Their characters are intended to raise a revolt and escape to the surface. We put together our characters, and the module said that we start with no equipment, needing to improvise weapons and such. Our captors were explained as being, quote, cruel and hedonistic. My girlfriend looks up from the printed module and says to my brother's girlfriend, "Are you absolutely sure you want to try this?" We all explained that we would give it the old college try. So she opens up the adventure. We are in the mine. My character has a pickaxe, and the best thing I can think to do is to attack one of the kobolds with it to get our revolt started. Of course, I miss. My girlfriend rolls on the auto battle chart for the counterattack. What follows is a very short, awkward silence before my girlfriend looks at me and raises her eyebrows. She says, "How, do you want me to do this?" I reply, "Well, what does the chart say? We'll just do it by the book." My girlfriend takes a deep breath, looks me straight in the eye, and says to me, and this is an exact quote, "The kobold shoves his dick up your ass. Roll an anal circumference check." Holy God, I've heard that F.A.T.A.L was dirty and all, but this way overexceeded what I thought it would be. The room was silent for a moment, and then my brother and his girlfriend burst out laughing. I asked my girlfriend if that's actually what the chart says, and she shows it to me. Sure enough, that is exactly what it said. I was being surprised by the guy I tried attacking, but at least I made the check. Yeah, it would be at this point that my curiosity about the game would falter, and I would just end the game there. Admittedly, it was sort of funny in a very juvenile way, but that humor lost all of its velocity when over the next several minutes, that pissing auto battle chart gang raped our characters and resized all of our holes. Eventually, my girlfriend decided to stop using it. We force ourselves through what eventually becomes a straightforward combat, and we move on, trying not to revisit that situation. We begin to try to fight our way towards the surface, when eventually, my girlfriend stops reading a descriptive passage and starts to skip through the module. Then she sighs. "What is it this time?" I ask, and she shakes her head, saying, "This here is trying to encourage you guys to defeat enemies by SAing them. Every encounter has more detailed conditions for SAing enemies and enslaving them than straight up killing them." We sit silent for a moment. Then my girlfriend flips the printout around and shows me the description of one of the encounters. I take the packet, flip through it, then I toss it into the kitchen trash barrel. I think the thing that bothered all of us the most was the fact that the core game mechanics weren't fun enough to play, even if you decided to ignore the sexual debauchery. Now, I have heard F.A.T.A.L come up in some stories that just kinda alluded to what the game was, but never actually looked up the game mechanics or read a story about it being played before, and it sounds a whole lot worse than I imagined. Honestly, I'm amazed that OP and his group managed to play it as long as they did, and OP likely did the right thing by tossing it in the waste bin after finding out what the game was all about. It kinda makes you wonder what kind of twisted mind could come up with a system like that, but at the same time, I'm not surprised that something like that exists, unfortunately. I'll tell you this much though, after reading that description of the game being played for that short amount of time, that game will never touch any table that I'll be playing at. It just sounds like edgy gross fantasies, passed off as edgy gross humor. I think you all deserve a kitty after that story. There we go. That is a bit better. Now I think we should just move on to the next post. Should I walk away from this game? By Reddit user EntirePositive8311. A coworker and I talk about D&D a lot. He's a cool dude, and I know his girlfriend, who is also cool. We kept talking about starting up a game, and as a fairly seasoned DM who is rusty, I saw this as a nice chance to get a casual, chill game in. He had some friends who wanted to join in, and pretty soon, I had a group of 4. 2 of them haven't played, but I was used to that. I've run D&D for the Adventurers League and dealt with my fair share of newbies, so I offered to run Lost Mines or Horde of the Dragon Queen, and they seemed interested in the latter. I was not expecting the shit show I walked into. My coworker has 5 dogs, which I learned about after he offered to run the game at his house. I assumed they would be in the backyard, or we would be in a side room. But no, 5 dogs rush around the room while we play. They smoke the entire time, and I'm cool with that, but when a blunt, a dab rig, and a bowl are getting passed around while people are drinking too, it's a bit excessive. Especially considering I have told this coworker and another player, who is also a coworker, that I have been trying to quit smoking. They talk over each other to the point that I can't answer one question before 2 or 3 more are asked. It's hectic, but whatever. The game itself didn't go too poorly. We had a session 0 where I did my best to explain how to play and how characters work to the new players. They're playing a bard and a cleric. The cleric was determined not to have a high wisdom, which I warned him was not a great idea. But he insisted, so I showed him some spells that wouldn't require spell attack rolls or saves. The bard players, though, immediately start asking to steal things, taking teeth from the dead, and switch to an evil alignment, despite me mentioning multiple times in session 0 that I do not want to have any evil characters, since it's hard to roleplay properly in a group of otherwise mostly ethical characters. Worst yet, the first session had an unprecedented amount of natural 20s. The first roll was a nat 20, and the players proceeded to roll about 7 more. It's been almost 5 years since I started a game with strangers, even more since I played with casual players, not weirdos who do cringe voices and set up distinct backstories. Am I just out of practice and awkward? Is this normal? Most of all, like the title asks, should I drop the game if it keeps going on like this? I don't want my coworkers to dislike me, but I also don't know if this worked well for me. Well, that seems like a bit of a pickle. I would say it's pretty rude for OP's coworker to host a game at his house and smoke with the other players like he did when he knows that OP is trying to quit. Then there's the whole deal with having 5 dogs running around and people talking over each other. All of that would be enough to give me a panic attack. And as far as OP continuing the game, I would say that if OP doesn't want to, just stand by the old adage of no D&D is better than bad D&D. Though, if OP wants to try to continue the game, I would say to talk to the coworker about the conditions and see if it is possible to hold the game someplace else, or at least put the dogs in the side room and not smoke at the table at least. And as far as the players' characters wanting to go with an evil alignment, I would say to have a session 0.5 to further discuss why that doesn't really work for you. Hopefully, the players would be receptive and you can continue the game, but if not, OP is in no way obligated to DM for them if they can't listen. Though, what would you suggest OP do here? Let's move on. Confession. I'm the Cheater. I'm a Spell Thief. By Reddit user, My D&D Secrets. I'm a Spell Thief. I'm a wizard in a party of 5. We've been playing since the start of the pandemic. We're nearing level 15. I haven't seen a spell scroll in the wild since like level 8. It was for banishment, so I've started adding spells to my spell book without consent. Some of you are going to say, why haven't you talked to the DM? I tried many times in conversation. Heck, when they asked for a wish list of magic items that we'd want, I additionally wrote another secondary wish list of spells I desired but would not take on level up. Others of you might be saying, why not ask your party members to create spell scrolls for you to copy from their prepared list during downtime? Well, it turns out sorceress, divine, and druidic magic is just too abstract for my mechanical wizard brain. It would require me to multi-class, 13 wisdom, 14 charisma. No thanks, that's sabotage. What broke the camel's back? After being told about a great lich's library, spending sessions to get there, and defeating a now hungry demi-lich, the library was destroyed. They had possibly memorized the spells and torched it. Fair, they're evil. Though mending and prestidigitation or any repair was impossible. I rolled a good investigation and arcana check. It felt like a cruel joke. In fairness, we did find a legendary cursed blade that we cured later for our fighter. Several sessions later, the sorcerer found a wandering stranger, probably a disguised dragon, that helped unlock their potential in a spiritual journey. It taught them additional spells. And that was it for me. Pure envy at the favoritism. I became a cheater. I never add a spell I've openly talked about, and I remove gold by 2.5 spell level times 100, plus the normal copying price. For instance, I'd love Misty Step, but I'm not using the 2 spells I could learn on level up to backtrack for a level 2 spell. So I spend 600 gold. A tax to cheat. This is me softening my offense. If anyone has noticed, they are too polite to call me out on it. You may ask, why don't you just leave if this is a problem? I would if this was a random group from Roll20, D&D Beyond, or r/looking for game. But these are friends I've known since my school years, from college parties to adult weddings and baby showers. Our friendship is more than a tabletop RPG table, yet it's also our most consistent get-together, as we have spread apart. And despite the negatives presented here, I enjoy my friends DMing. I'm just neglected in this department. So this is just my sin and confession. I am the horror story. I'm the cheater. Man, talk about a tough position to be in. While I can kind of understand why OP did what they did, it would have probably been best to talk to the DM after the thing that caused OP to cheat, rather than go down the road that OP did. Now, OP is in the position of just continuing doing what they're doing and feeling bad about it, or coming clean to the DM about what OP did and explaining why. Now, I have never played a wizard character, and my extent of how they work come mainly from Baldur's Gate 3. But it does sound like the DM was giving other characters chances to get magic items and such, yet neglected OP by never letting them find or even buy spell scrolls to add to the wizard's spellbook. But yet, that is never a reason to cheat, and OP should have pressed the DM more about this issue before doing so. Though, that's at least my opinion. So, what do you think OP should do? Should they come clean and talk to the DM? Or just continue doing what they are doing until this particular campaign ends? I would love to hear your opinions in the comments. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.